and welcome to a tunefully dissonant edition of Ben's Junk. So, with that in mind, we're gonna go a bit schizophrenic perhaps today, but we're gonna have one foot in progressive rock and one foot in heavy metal here. So we're gonna do something I've been known to do every few months, look into at least part of one of my collections. So this time it's all gonna be music video type stuff. So actual MTV styled music videos or concert stuff. And so, as I said, it's all going to be prog or metal this time, and it's all going to be VHS, Betamax, or Laserdisc. So you're not going to see anything too contemporary. Not that anyone would ever expect that out of me, because, Benny Boy's history of music ends in about 1988. So anyway, let's kick things off with a few Laserdiscs. So first up, we've got Laurie Anderson's Home of the Brave. And this is from, the movie is from '86, and I think this particular Laserdisc issue is from '96. And this is also, I believe, the last appearance on home video that this has had. It's never found its way to DVD. I don't think it's ever been on any of the streaming services. Don't quote me on that, but I don't believe so. But this is noteworthy in that this kind of finds her maybe a touch past her commercial peak, not that it was ever that much of one to begin with, but she was, of course, just as much, if not more, performance artist than musician, and at her height of notoriety, she was doing these incredibly long shows, and I think she had one at one point where it was 4 nights in a row and several hours per night. So kind of self-indulgent as well. But this is noteworthy in that it kind of finds her operating on that level that she was at back then, because she's really scaled things back since then. So anyway, this was a thrift store find ages ago. I don't even remember how many years ago. Probably pushing a good 10 years now. So, of course, there was the album Home of the Brave, and it's all done here, plus some other songs. I believe it's all done here. I'd have to find my copy again to check that. But yeah, I thought I would start on that. And also, I should note that the guitarist on this is one Adrian Belew, and we'll be seeing him again in just a bit. So this next one, it totally breaks theme, but I feel like I should just throw it in because it's tangential. So here's a documentary that's simply called Guitar, and it's from, I believe, 1991. And it's only ever been on Laserdisc, and it only came out in Japan. It aired here in the States, but as far as home video goes. So anyway, I had to see this thing. So after I did the VHS Vault episode at least a year ago on, I think I called it So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star. And it was all about how to be a better singer, how to get a record deal, how to do this, how to do that. And at one point in the How to Get a Record Deal video, we have an interview with Jeff Skunk Baxter, who was in Ultimate Spinach and Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers. And I just kind of was looking to see what he had been up to, because I hadn't seen him in a long time. And somewhere in there I found that he had made this documentary, and I was just like, well, I've got to see it. So I swallowed hard and coughed up I think it was $45 for an imported copy of this sucker. But unfortunately, it is only 1 hour, and it's all jammed onto one side of the disc, so you don't even get CAV mode here. There is a pretty amusing bit with Mark Knopfler and Bert Weedon, the British guitarist, not really well known here in the States, Weedon that is. And Knopfler gives him a hard time because Whedon had this book out in England, and it was kind of the book for aspiring guitarists. And it was something to the effect of learn to play guitar in a day. And he's like, it took me a hell of a lot longer than that. So, there were some good anecdotes in here, but it's really not all that insightful. But you do get to hear from quite a few. Sometimes it's only just one sentence. So there is a bit of clickbait, proto-clickbait going on here, bait and switch, whatever you want to call it. But, and then of course, somebody like Sam Kinison, yeah, he played guitar. He wasn't all that great at it. He was a comedian first and foremost, but he had a few songs on his albums. They weren't really all that noteworthy. Maybe his cover of Wild Thing, and that's about it. So anyway, I just had to throw that in, and I spent way longer on that than I thought I would. So anyway, speaking of Japan, the rest of my Laserdiscs are all Japan only. So here's one for Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Pictures at an Exhibition. And this was just after their first album dropped, and I don't think it had even come out in the US quite yet. Now this has been reissued a few times over, but it's usually not the complete show. It is just them doing Pictures at an Exhibition, which became its own album a little later. And so it makes it only something like 35 minutes. But here you get the full 80, 90-minute show, however long it is. And this had the worst cigarette smell I have ever experienced. But it's nice that they left the price tag on. But you can even, if I have the light hit it just right, you can still see some of the gunk, smoker's gunk in there. And I had to completely throw away the inserts and everything. They just smelled so bad. But it is a good concert if you're into ELP. And of course, it's great to have the entire show. Really about the only disappointing part of it to me was Knife Edge. I love that song from the first ELP album. And it starts as that, and then it just goes off into something else, and it never really comes back, and it goes on for like 20 minutes, and it totally kills the momentum of the rest of the show. Now, of course, this being Japanese, we are dealing with hard-coded subtitles again. The good news is this is like 70% instrumental, so it's really not that big a deal, and not Carl Palmer, Greg Lake addresses the audience only briefly at one point, and I think Keith Emerson briefly does at one point. Not sure if anybody really understood them, although I guess a lot of Japanese folks do learn some English. But anyway, it was certainly more than people who speak English do. So I'm not entirely sure what the year is that they're referring to, but we got the dates for some other titles here. I believe this is from '97, this particular issue. So I, again, have held on to it just because the DVD issues all seem to be chopped up. So, of course, Greg Lake was the original bassist and singer in King Crimson. And there's Adrian Belew again, who had become the frontman by this point. This is from '84. Three of a Perfect Pair. And I had to make sure I got the Japanese issue of this one because this got edited for America and I think for Europe as well. And this has been reissued, but it's still the edited version. You still lose a couple of songs. Although I don't remember there being any hard-coded subtitles to this. I'd have to pop it in again. But one thing that stands out to me about this is it makes me remember why Tony Levin is one of my favorite bassists of all time. Things go wrong with his bass, and at one point he just gives up and goes over to a synthesizer and just plays his bass lines on a synth and does a fantastic job. And just, they were really a well-oiled machine here. Now, as far as 80s King Crimson goes, I have their 3 albums from the 80s, but I think they were better live at the time. Here they didn't have a chance to overdub, and so to me the studio albums seem kind of cluttered, a bit claustrophobic at times, but here it's a lot more open and you can really appreciate what they were doing, and it seems like the songs come to the fore a little better here. So with King Crimson on the brain, we move on to a beta tape. And this is them performing in France in the summer of 1982. And I wasn't really sure what to expect with this one because, for one, I didn't know EG had anything in the US as far as video went. But, well, here's what happened. Gem, if you are familiar with them, they did a lot of imports during the 70s and 80s. And they did get this issued over here. At least I think this is legit. This is really one of those screwy things. So it was shot on film initially, but transferred to videotape, and then a PAL to NTSC transfer for this. And it's a solid one. It's a little ghosty, but nothing too terrible. I've seen a lot worse. But I'm just taking it on faith that this is indeed legit, because the gem credit on here says it was made in New Jersey. So anyway, who knows? Were they openly using BASF tape, as I like to call it? And also another odd thing, the record tab is still in it. And the show's on here, the show's perfectly fine. And then afterwards, I don't know if this was added by whoever owned this, if they were just some sort of mega fan or what, but there was a segment from the old USA show Night Flight, and it was of King Crimson, 1984, and a couple of music videos that I didn't even know existed. And obviously not an original recording, it was dubbed from somebody else's tape. But I am taking it on faith that they just added that on here. They noticed that the record tab was still in, and there was still a few minutes at the end of the tape, and they just stuck it there. Either that or Jem added it for some weird reason. I don't know what was going on there. So, I don't know, maybe there's some uber King Crimson fan out there that can fill me in on that. Okay, so let's get a lot more mainstream here. I think this was the first concert video I ever bought. Pink Floyd, Pulse. I think I got it around 97. This came out on home video in 95. Well, it had to have been 98 when I got this, come to think of it. So this has been reissued, and for whatever reason, David Gilmour went back fairly recently and found alternate takes and put together a whole different version of this show. And I do have the original DVD issue of this. It's not terribly well done. Someday I'll find a decent price on the Laserdisc, if only to have an upgraded version of the VHS. But I'm not even sure this thing plays anymore. This and the next tape, I just watched into the ground when I was in middle school. So it may very well be a staticky mess. I didn't think to pop it in before I started doing this. So anyway, I've since got a Laserdisc of this one. I won't spotlight it here, but Live at Pompeii. And this is the one I truly watched right into the ground. And this is, I think, what gave Benny Boy his avant-garde streak. Pink Floyd playing in the ruins of Pompeii, and it's still mostly instrumental. It's a lot harder and a lot weirder than a lot of, excuse me, their subsequent stuff. So, truly nostalgia for me. And since we're more mainstream, let's just do a nice big long run of mainstream stuff. So Moody Blues, Legend of a Band, kind of a hybrid documentary and music video compilation. And they used to run this thing incessantly on PBS, at least the one in Colorado, the one in Denver. Haven't watched it in forever. It seemed like I could just kind of turn on PBS for a while and see this one. But this was a thrift store find. I'm pretty sure this has since made it to DVD. For what it's worth, Live at Pompeii has been on DVD, but it got butchered. So then we got probably the oldest tape in the lot here, Yes Songs from Yes. And this is the original 82-ish Vid America issue. When is this? 84, excuse me. Of course, the film I think is from, well, 73, it says right there. And I really enjoyed it. I've never been a huge Yes fan, but this made me more of one. This made me respect them a lot more. It was just really a nice watch, and good to see them in action. Maybe that was just what I needed for that group. And if we're talking Yes, I guess we got to do Genesis. So this is truly a strange one. It's volume 1 of their music videos, and it covers up through the Invisible Touch album. But that song is not on here, so their big, truly pop hit. So I'm assuming it's on volume 2. I've never seen volume 2 in the wild. So anyway, they do go all the way back to the Steve Hackett era for at least one song. And I suppose I should look to see if this is on DVD now. That might be better. I wanted to get their first box set, the one that covered the Peter Gabriel era way back, and that's been out of print and fetches stupid amounts on the collector's market, but it had a lot of great video footage. But it's almost all on YouTube. You can see as a surprising amount of them with Peter Gabriel there. But yeah, this was a thrift store find, and I wasn't going to turn it down for the 99 cents or whatever it was. And then Rush. And I've only ever watched this once, and it's mostly a concert film. There is a video on it. But yeah, I'm not a huge Rush fan, but at the same time I have a big chunk of their albums, but that's because they're one of those bands I seem to find in the thrift store bins. So I've built up, I'd say like 3/4 of their catalog just for that. But yeah, this is them just kind of going through their hits, if you will. I mean, they only had one true pop hit, and that almost never gets played anymore. So anyway, I have no idea if this has ever been on DVD or not, but again, I wasn't about to turn this sucker down. I've made it pretty well known on Archive over the years that I'm not much of a metalhead, and that I've been known to joke that my history of heavy metal ends in 1982. So I'm going to shatter that illusion slightly, but not by much. So anyway, this is probably the only truly metal tape that I'm going to show here. I do have one or two from some like Scandinavian black metal bands, but those are just, for me, more for absurdity. If you've seen a lot of those music videos, there's plenty of that sort of thing on YouTube. But yeah, I certainly wasn't going to turn down Iron Maiden. And this rounds up, I think, all of their videos up until 91 or so. And the sad part is Benny Boy still doesn't own any Iron Maiden albums. So this has been kind of his entire exposure, aside from hearing them occasionally on the heavy metal station growing up, hearing Run to the Hills rather occasionally. So anyway, now we get into the poppy stuff. So Whitesnake, and I have wanted to get this one on Laserdisc, but it's just, I've never found one at a decent price, at what I consider a decent price. But it's just the three singles from their self-titled album, and some little stray bits of behind-the-scenes stuff, and there isn't much to it, but hey, you get to see Tawny Kitaen on the hood of a Jaguar, and I think that's why most people pick this up, certainly the young men that picked this up back then. So yeah, it's one I'd like to upgrade, and it just hasn't happened. And of course, I'm old enough spiritually that I see David Coverdale's name and I think Deep Purple. So we're doing the hair metal thing. We got to have a little Vixen from 1988. And boy, the lighting just does not like this one. Yeah, I promise it does not look faded in person. It actually is in excellent condition. And this plays out almost, structurally speaking, identical to the Whitesnake tape. And this is one that I certainly wouldn't mind on Laserdisc. But yeah, admittedly, I've only got one album of theirs, the first one. So if there was one to have, I guess that was it. And then this is going to close things out for today. I got 3 videos, all from the same band, and they were one of the first bands I ever really got into. And you would not think that this was one of Benny Boy's first real favorite bands. But one of the first albums that I owned that I got on an Ancient Period cassette was Back in Black from AC/DC. So I got 3 videos of theirs, clipped from 1990. And as it turned out, the videos were just kind of silly. They're not terrible, but anyway, I don't remember where I got this. I really don't. But I do remember picking this up. So This is not sun faded. This is how it actually looks. It's how it looked when I got it. And I bought this new at Best Buy in the late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere right towards the end of VHS, fly on the wall. And it is a full-on concept video. So MTV could extract any one song they wanted, but you watch it and it is a film, a half-hour film. So it's a little heavier conceptually than one would expect out of the group. But I don't remember if I nagged my parents into getting this for me or if I got it, but I remember it was not cheap. I think it was like 25 bucks, even at Best Buy at the time. As for the album, this is kind of the best of the album. It's kind of one of those, you got the couple singles and a couple decent album cuts, and the rest is just kind of filler. But I mentioned one of the first albums I ever owned was Back in Black, and not too long after, I got a copy of Who Made Who. And even though it's as close to a greatest hits as that they've really ever had, I think. And it was also the soundtrack to the movie Maximum Overdrive. And that's a somewhat infamous film. I think it's actually kind of a fun movie. Stephen King wrote the story, and he directed it. I think it's the only thing he's ever directed, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. But it got me to watch the movie, and that movie scared the hell out of me when I first saw it when I was, I don't know, in 5th grade or so. So this particular tape, this is obviously an ex-rental, and one that somebody got very, very wrong, or they were just thinking about the spine more than anything else. So one of those video stores that could have it that way. And I just find it amusing that it's a musical. So I'd like to think that this sat next to a copy of Hello, Dolly at some point. But we've referenced them on this show before. Video update, and of course my lovely, lovely camera. The video update in Fort Collins, Colorado, and it found its way down to my previous hometown, which everybody gets upset when I pronounce the name of, even though I pronounce it the same way the citizens of the town do, but I'm just not going to go there today because I don't feel like it. So anyway, yeah, a little bit of a trip down memory lane with Benny Boy today. And I'm going to call it a day here, and I would end with a bit of headbanging or something, but I don't think my neck could take it anymore. So yeah, I'm just going to sprawl out on the couch and do some prog stuff. That's probably about all I can stand at this point.